And Gary mentioned the first paper that I wrote on this. I was interested in looking at some of these new cases, especially the Nimitz encounter. And I found it fascinating that, my graphics isn't quite working here. I found it fascinating that these tic-tac shaped objects were observed to drop from about 28,000 feet to sea level in 0.78 seconds. That is crazy and really anomalous. How anomalous? Do the math, do the calculations. This is actually, I've criticized other physicists who've said, well, the analysis was rather simple. And my response to this was like, yes, you should have done it. Your students could have done it. And in fact, there was a class in Georgia, a high school class in Georgia, high school physics class that used this paper as an example on how you can make estimates of kinematics. So if you look at this, you can estimate the minimum acceleration, which comes about from the object would have accelerated halfway and then decelerated the other half of the way. That gives you a lower bound for the acceleration, which comes out to be around 5,000 Gs, 5,000 times the acceleration of gravity. No people aren't going to survive this. Most equipment won't survive this. An F-35's wings will rip off at about 13 Gs. So 5,000 Gs is really anomalous. We estimated the power, and of course to do this you need to know the mass. We don't know the mass. These things were estimated to be about the size of an F-18, and an F-18 is around 10,000 kilograms of mass. We decided let's take a much lower bound, let's take 1/10 of that. So we just assuming that this was maybe 1/10 of the mass of an F-18, you come out to a power that you can't of 1,100 gigawatts of power. This is more than 10 times the total nuclear power output of the United States. Let that sink in for a minute. 1,000 gigawatts. Remember the movie Back to the Future? When he's got to power up his car, 1.2 gigawatts! I mean, that was 1.2 and he's all freaking out. This is 1,000. This is one craft the size of an F-18. How does this happen? We don't know. This is where the anomaly is. This has been known for a long time. Hermann Oberth was the German father of modern rocketry. He was a mentor of Wernher von Braun. There's Hermann in the front center, the very grumpy gentleman there. Why is he so grumpy? He's grumpy because in 1954, he gave a lecture on flying saucers where he pointed out that they have been measured to travel at speeds of 19 kilometers a second, which is about 42,000 miles an hour. And he points out that, he actually says, if there would only be 3 or 4 measurements, I would not rely upon them and would wait for further measurements. But there is existing more than 50 such measurements, radar measurements, in 1954. That's like 70 years ago. This was known 70 years ago that these things are flying at spacecraft speeds. Why do people always assume they're spacecraft? It's simple, because they fly as fast as spacecraft do. This doesn't take a PhD to figure this out. Yeah, PhDs can't handle it. Here's another work done by French researcher Claude Poer, who looked at the radar observations at Minot Air Force Base in 1968. A really interesting encounter there where the plane actually banked and flew over the UFO, which was egg-shaped and looked like molten lava. The accelerations were measured to be 209 Gs with a top speed of about 9,000 miles an hour. JAL Airlines flew across Anchorage, Alaska in 1986, followed by a large UFO that the pilot estimated to be 3 times the size of a 747. How wrong can you be with that estimate? Okay, let's say you're off by 20%, which would be a pretty big error. This thing's the size of an aircraft carrier. He said when it came in front of the plane, he couldn't see out of the windscreen. You're not that wrong at this point. You can't just disbelieve the observers. But there exists radar data. When I summarized it, I analyzed the summary of the data. Dr. Quimby, who was at the Niels Bohr Institute, did a much better job. He actually recovered the radar data set, and he analyzed 11 jumps made by this aircraft-sized object, and found that 3 of those jumps, the craft had accelerations of 9,000 Gs or more, with a top speed of 269,000 miles an hour. Through the air, no sonic booms. Don't ask me how, but this is the anomaly. 269,000 miles an hour. You can get to the moon in less than 50 minutes. Why do we think these things might be spacecraft? Because they move much faster than our spacecraft